Call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman. Here. Icoangeli. Vining. Here. Germaini.
Here.
Lamore.
Here.
Felder.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here. I'd ask we all please rise for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
We have faith and hope in each other and our city. We ask for your guidance in the decisions that are made here as we work together for the welfare of this community and all its residents.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, first item, please.
The first item would be any amendments to the agenda.
Looking to administration or council. Any amendments? Seeing none. Next item, please.
The next item, citizen comments not related to an agenda item.
So at our meetings, we have the opportunity for citizens to make comment at the beginning of the meeting of anything not related to an agenda item, or of course, there's a second opportunity at the close of the meeting. So with that, are there any comments from those present here this evening not related to an agenda item? Any comments? Seeing none. Clerk, next item, please.
Picture up. Hold on.
Oh, yeah.
The next item is a proclamation.
One second. So we have two proclamations here this evening, and I'm going to come down to the podium. First, I'm going to ask, it's a great opportunity to recognize young athletes and their academic achievements as well here, as we have two teams in our community that have won state championships. And so first, I'm going to come down and ask that Coach Karen O'Brien join me at the podium, and then we'll move to the next one. You can join me. So on behalf of the City Council, it's a great honor to be here this evening on this proclamation to recognize and pay tribute to St. Mary Catholic Central High School volleyball team. You know, the ladies did a wonderful job throughout the year, and in the conclusion, as they were in at the Kellogg Arena in Battle Creek, and on November 23rd, 2020, the ladies captured the school's 6th state title for volleyball in the Class C state title. And as the proclamation I have here that I'll be presenting, and I won't read it verbatim, but I do have some highlights I want to at least share. The Lady Kestrel's first Monroe County Region School to win 6 volleyball state titles from 2003 through 2019. You know, you look at the dedication and service that they provide in the school and in the community, but Coach Karen O'Brien and Assistant Coach Connor Kerwachuk, I had to get that right, you know, they guided the ladies, and I know that their pictures are on there, and their names are here in the proclamation. I'm not going to read all of them, but the team's overall record for the season was 50-2. 50 wins, 2 losses. That's just amazing. And with that, we also recognize the fact of their academic achievements. Overall grade point average for the team was 3.89. They had one member earn the first team all academic honors, as well as 2 earned honorable mention. They had a team slogan that kept them throughout there, and they took care of each other by watching each other and had their back. But they played the games like true champions and represented the City Mill greatly with excellent team spirit and exemplary sportsmanship. It's always a pleasure on behalf of the council to be able to present proclamations such as this, but state champions don't come by that often. So we want to congratulate the ladies with the St. Mary's Catholic Central High School volleyball team. Therefore, I, Robert E. Clark, Mayor of the City of Monroe, with the full support of City Council, do hereby proclaim January 21st, 2020 as St. Mary Catholic Central High School Volleyball State Champion Team Day. So I just want to say congratulations and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I asked the coach if she wanted to make some comments. She said, thank you, and it's there. But since the ladies are all here, does anybody from the team want to come up and say anything? There's got to be one. Who's the team captain? Come on up here. Oh, she says, oh, I wasn't expecting this. Oh. On behalf of the team, would you like to say something?
I'm very proud of our team for what we have accomplished, and all of our hard work has definitely paid off. Very proud of you all.
Well, thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
all proud of you as well. Thank you, ladies. Yeah, whoever the team captain is getting prepared, I'm sure. So we have a second proclamation here this evening, as we stated, and it is again an honor and privilege as the mayor and for City Council and everybody here and our residents the opportunity to pay tribute to the St. Mary Catholic Central High School football team. I'd ask if Coach Adam Kipp would please come join me. I'm going to switch sides this time. So, as the proclamations have, we have a lot of whereases, and it highlights the achievements of the team. But with that, I'm not going to read it verbatim, but I do have some highlights that I'd like to present here. And on November 29th, 2019, at Ford Field in Detroit, the St. Mary's Catholic Central High School football team once again made history by capturing the school's third state title with the defeat of Maple City Glen Lake High School. And whereas during this game they distinguished themselves and throughout the career had an outstanding 12-1 record, congratulations. And the team had 9 members earn first team all academic honors and 6 members earned honorable mention. So as well as athletics, it's academics that we see from our students in our community. Again, it provides through the proclamation, it talks about the MHSAA division, but also it goes on and lists all the students that are on the team within the proclamation. Whereas Coach Adam Kipp and his assistant coaches, which I'll ask him to recognize the ones that are here when he gets an opportunity to speak, did provide the discipline, the dedication, sportsmanship, and of course education we talked about, and all encompassing teamwork at the same time. The SMCC Falcons played the game like true champions, excellent team spirit, and as exemplary ambassadors, not only for the city of Monroe, but for their school and our entire community. In this proclamation, as it states, therefore I, Robert E. Clark, Mayor of the City of Monroe, and with full support of the City Council, do here proclaim January 22nd, 2020. So you both get your own day. Will be tomorrow as St. Mary Catholic Central High School Football State Championship Team Day. And from the City Council, our sincere thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, before I give him the microphone here, I also want to just follow something up that just happened to come and read about yesterday.
Uh-oh.
Yes, it's for the coach here. So each year they recognize coaches throughout the state and give them honors as well. And St. Mary Catholic Central coach Adam Kipp was awarded the Coach of the Year for Division 6. Congratulations to yourself. So I'm going to hand you this microphone so we can stand and also turn. But maybe if you would start by recognizing your assistant coaches that are here, and then any comments you have.
Here with us tonight.
Whoa!
That was loud.
That's booming.
We have Brian Flynn, Len Patson, and Nate Geiger, coaches that have been on our staff. Nate's a new addition to us this year, but these guys work tirelessly. Nick Hawkins, Bill Baccarella, John Jarmo, and Pat Ignani are the other 4 assistants who put in so many hours. These guys made it possible this year for our players, and their players a lot of hard work, a lot of time in the weight room in the off season to get to this point. We're very thankful to be recognized and honored by the City Council tonight and Mayor Clark for recognizing all the work that they've put in, the players, coaches, families, the community, to everything. This wasn't just a state championship for the football team. This was a state championship for our program, our school, and our community, and we're very proud to be a part of it.
thank you. That looks like another happy photograph up there. In conclusion, I probably should have started. We'd ask if we'll start with the ladies first. If you could have a photograph at the front of the council chamber series. And if council members could kind of join in the middle. Anywhere over here. Anywhere. Yeah, almost the end. Down if you want. Behind, come down.
Stand on the chair.
You're so short.
We should hold our hands up.
You two need to get in a space.
Oh, here's one. Very good. Thank you, ladies. Congratulations again.
Great job, guys.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, we're fine.
That's okay. Michelle is.
I'm coming down. She's so.
Coach, if you could have the gentlemen from the football team come up for a photograph.
Oh, all you big boys gonna cover you up.
I know. And I'm taller than Michelle.
Are you?
I think so.
She's so tiny.
I feel like everybody's
These
taller
guys
than
are
me.
not super big though.
Yeah.
I mean tall is what I mean. Because they look bulky, but they don't look tall.
Most boys grow after they graduate.
We're good. You're good. Right there. We're good.
We have to stand in the chairs.
I do.
Appreciate it.
That's gonna be a penalty next to
Height challenge.
I know, we can see it. Nowhere to go.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Congratulations again. Call the captain. Where's the captain? Wyatt.
Speaking of height challenge people. He is. Captain, quarterback.
Story of my life.
Dude, went for the left one again.
I forgot to ask the captain to speak.
We'll take just 30 seconds or so here. I spoke with both coaches, and they have some studies yet to do this evening. So as we clear the chambers, and by some and those that are wishing to stay, thank you. I think we're ready. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is under council action, item 2651, proposed ordinance 20-001, an ordinance to amend chapter 22, boards, commissions, and authorities, up for its first reading.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we place ordinance 20-001, boards, commissions, authorities, and committees up for its first reading and establish February 3rd, 2020 as the public hearing date for the final reading.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Kalonji, supported by Councilman Lamore on item 2651, the proposed ordinance 20-001 to amend chapter 22 and to establish the public hearing as stated. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman?
Yes.
Michaelangeli?
Yes.
Vining?
Yeah.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Ordinance 20-001, Chapter 22, Boards, Commissions, Authorities, and Committees, Article 12, an ordinance to amend Chapter 22, Boards, Commissions, Authorities, and Committees to add Article 12, Telegraph Road Corridor Improvement Authority of the Code of the City of Monroe. You're welcome.
Next item, please.
The next item is item 2650, PUD Final Approval and Agreement, 1150 Turns Drive, Comfort Suites.
Mr. Pastu, is there some introduction or comments as we get started?
Your Honor, we're asking City Council to approve tonight the final PUD agreement for the where the Comfort Inn Suites will be previously the old Knights Inn. We're asking council to approve the plan and agreement. There are a couple of items that we're asking to allow myself as city manager to fill in a couple of numbers regarding escrow accounts related to engineering inspections and additional building inspections that may be needed be in the neighborhood of about 15,000. That'll be above and beyond what the building permit will be for the project itself. I think that would be sufficient for us to, monitor closely the project going forward. So,
Very good.
Your Honor?
Council Michelangeli.
Yeah, I had noticed on page 6 that the escrow amounts were not specified, so that's something that you're going to plug in at a later date.
what I'm requesting is that the authority to do
And
that.
I noticed that I knew that we had some conversations back and forth with them relative to design issues. Have those been resolved? Those have been resolved.
And we made, if I may, just through your honor, again, just, part of my follow-up is, okay, make sure, and I think the language is very, that the attorney finalized last week is explicit that the concept drawings that were approved by the council and they are incorporated into the construction drawings are consistent, but they do govern what will be constructed on that site, so.
Yes.
Your Honor, I'll move to approve the final PUD plan and agreement for the Comfort Suites project at 1150 Turns. Authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the appropriate documents.
Second. Motion by Council Michelangeli, supported by Councilman Lamore on item 2650, the PUD Final Improvement Agreement for 1150 Turnus Drive. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman?
Yes.
Michaelangeli?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 2645, 2020 Budget Amendment.
Mr. Pastu, is there any follow-up comments, or this is the letter coming from this? Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Your Honor, this would be the budget amendment we're asking City Council to approve. We've identified, I believe, 7 items that would be amending the budget. The first item being related to the building department who oversees our facilities to handle some equipment replacements at the ALCC as a result of some damage by lightning. I probably have went through our property liability for part of the claim, and this looks like to be the residual of that. We're also asking city manager's budget increased, as well as $5,000 for the water and wastewater for additional consulting services related to capital improvements funding expenses. I'll talk a little bit later, if I will, later on about. In fact, I might be a little better time as we go through this. Increase the manager's budget for additional customer service experience training related through technology. When we went through our customer experience programming a little over a year ago, identified a number of areas through our employees that we think we could make some improvements. We didn't have the internal resources for doing a lot of the programming improvements. We do now as a result of our new technology personnel that we have, and so that would take and allow additional work to facilitate those improvements with our employees and work with our IT specialist related to that improvement. The other items that we have increase economic development budget, $20,000 for study, working with not only the port, but also the county and more than likely Monroe Township as to possible improvements along the La Pleasance corridor. Think of Lazy Boy site and what was accomplished with that, very similar, although in this case here, we do have, a working relationship and some dialogue going with Monroe Township going forward. This project would be coordinated with the Monroe County Business Development Corporation. We think, leveraging our port, the rail, and surface transportation could be a great addition, particularly in light of the Monroe Link program that was established a few years ago.
If I might say, in addition, the Opportunity Zone extends to just a portion of that, if I'm not mistaken? Not the La Pleasance,
Small
but
portion,
a
yeah.
small portion
Yep.
in Township. Yes, thank you, I'm sorry.
Increase the human resource budget by 25 for supplemental actuarial valuations. We just discussed some of this in a closed session related to upcoming negotiations. Carrying over a little over 95,000 in building demolitions from the prior fiscal year to this upcoming year that were not spent, and then reduce the general fund pension contribution by $74,000 due to the timing related to the contribution. This was one of these things that Mr. Sell looked into a little bit further, where rather than do monthly disbursements to the pension fund, if you do it up front, it has a phenomenal effect on the contribution, saving the general fund about $74,000. Yeah, Mr. Bosonic, County Administrator, mentioned that they had done something, and we followed up. Mr. Sell looked at it and goes, that works well. So we took advantage of that and saves the city general fund about $74,000. So with that, if I could circle back to the third item regarding, or the second item dealing with the budget for capital improvements. I had that on the work session, didn't get a chance to talk about it. A couple things related to that. In light of our presentation last Monday night regarding the public safety assessment and a lot of the decisions that the city council would have to consider operationally and even the implementation and the deadline of getting all of this completed by the end of June, I think it's better to put the police study millage aspect off for at least another year. Let's focus on the operational issue with public safety assessment and then come back and look at it once that matter has been resolved. The second part is I've given some consideration to the capital improvements. I talked about it in a very, very broad area with streets and parks and facility improvements. And candidly, I think our greatest need is in the area of local streets, residential streets. And I would prefer to have that area focused on that. We'd certainly look with some consulting help and assistance in some of that process, but not nearly as much as what it would have been. But I think in doing so, you still need the ad hoc committee to go forward looking at, what duration, how much, and, what streets based on the PASER rating that Mr. Lewis puts together every year. So I think it's probably better to pull back in that regard. So with that, I think I covered what I was going to talk about during the work session related to the Police Millage Ad hoc Committee and Capital Improvements Ad hoc Committee as well.
There may be questions for Mr. Pastou on this. I know that we're in, this item is about the proposed budget amendment, but it ties to the conversation that the manager's having of how we move forward and what we can move forward and what we expect we could accomplish between now and some deadlines. I know the Clerk Treasurer Lavoie has looked at those dates as well and trying to get that through. So if there's any clarity that's needed from Mr. Pastou, now it's time to ask regarding that, as well as the item that's before us on the budget amendment. It kind of ties together as he has capital improvements program funding and what we can accomplish, not only with the budget that's being proposed to be amended, but also what we may be able to achieve and push forward here in this upcoming year. So I'll give opportunity if there's any questions for the city manager. Okay, Councilwoman Germain wants clarification.
Just clarify for me how this affects the police ad hoc committee, please.
This appropriation would not, but I bring it up in the context of the Capital Improvements Ad hoc Committee. I think thinking about our presentation last week and really what all it entails to, continue a dialogue with the city council regarding the the future direction for public safety operations in the city, and understanding there's a pretty hard deadline at the end of June. I think we need to have a firm and well-defined direction first before would go out to the public. And I just don't want to send mixed messages like shrug our shoulders. We don't know. We need to know if we're going to go ask for it. I still think somewhere down the road it's going to be necessary to talk about it further, but this may not be the year to do it.
I'll just make a comment. I think it's a good question to ask because it's within the budget, but as Mr. Pastou said, that decision or this proposal with the budget amendments doesn't impact that moving forward. And there's always an opportunity at the city manager's comments at the end, if you want to delve into that, the police ad hoc committee that was discussed at our last meeting. But I'll just make a comment here because it does apply is, it is a lift when we talk about the public safety and all that we're going to have to do in moving forward with that. And how do we get that achieved to where we need it to be at the same time to think about a police station? And there's just so much that we probably can take on at the same time. I don't take the manager's recommendation on that ad hoc committee to be a closing discussion. I take it as a discussion that's just going to have to come behind something else. That's kind of the best I can say how it is. But I'll entertain if there's any questions for Mr. Pastou, maybe as we get to the budget amendments and the items listed there. I'm sorry, Councilman Felder. I'm
Thank you,
out
Your
of the
Honor.
work session now.
You're fine. A question pertaining to the capital improvements ad hoc committee, and please don't let me get off track here. You had mentioned employing the services of a consultant. I'm just wondering, where particularly do we plan on deploying them above and in addition to what the CPC has already outlaid in the documents that they've sent us? It seems to me like all the projects are there on the table, and it would be up to the ad hoc committee to make a suggestion to council on which ones to pursue.
The fact that if I may, Your
Yes,
Honor, and
Mr.
just
Pastou.
in answer to that, what I have in there is probably on the far end. I'm not sure we'll use a whole lot of what's in there, but if need be, I think some of it's going to involve some packaging. Again, one of the consultant I'd worked with has been successful in other communities, and so while we have much of the information, how do you package, present it to the community in the best form? But the scope is substantially less in the sense that I think the focus should be just looking at local residential type streets or local streets by definition under State Act 51. So, but I think that's part of it. It won't be as extensive as initially thought. So,
In terms of narrowing the scope of the millage request.
yes. Well, and also the consultant service as a result. We're not going to, and if I may, Your Honor, just
Yes.
to expound it a little bit is, there's other, we still provide some funding for some of the other general areas like parks and facilities and sidewalks in the general fund. I wouldn't look to diminish that commitment. CDBG also. So I think there's other areas that we can deal with that. I think it'd be just simple enough just to focus on the streets, which I think a lot of people recognize there is a great need for improvements in the community.
Councilman?
Not at this time. Your Honor.
There's others if you come across, we come back. Other comments or questions from the council members? I'll give Councilman Felder a moment if he has another thought. I think he's pondering something, but it obviously can come up later in relation to that too. So, but not as far as the vote here this evening on the proposed budget amendment to the current budget. Anything further, Mr. Pastou?
Sorry. Earlier in the meeting, it was alluded to in the work session, Mr. Cochran mentioned about demolitions, but we do have probably somewhere on the order of about 9, 10 residential demolitions between the DNR grant, blight-related actions that have been taken, and then properties that we've purchased through the foreclosure process with the county treasurer. So we'll have probably somewhere in the order of about 9. This is a carryover from what was not spent last fiscal year, and we'll add to what was already appropriated. So,
Thank you.
Mhm.
Inquiries on the items listed here, the 7 items in the proposal. Seeing none, then it's up for council for action.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion to approve the amendment to the general fund, wastewater fund, and water fund budgets as described on the attached report. Authorize the changes to be made.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Akalanich, supported by Councilman Lamore on item 2645, the 2020 budget amendment as presented. No further comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman?
Yes.
Angeli?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is item 2639, appointments to city boards and commissions.
Maybe I'll make a comment to start, and because it is on the agenda for council's consideration on recommendations for appointments. I did send an email out that, as I have in the past, and asked that the copies, at least the applications for the new members that were being, or new appointments be added. One is in the Commission on Environment, and the other is on the Riverways and Heritage Corridor Commission, Advisory Commission. And the other one, which is a little more lengthy, I apologize, I think you might have gotten two emails. It's a later email which talks about the manner in which we went to fill the Telegraph Road Corridor Improvement Authority, and with business property owners or business interest, and the recommendations that were listed there. So I wanted to give a little more detail because that wasn't necessarily through an application process, as Mr. Cochran and I made contacts with various business owners and calls to find those throughout the Telegraph Road to have a fair representation. And I think as this starts, I believe there'll be others that may have an interest in the future. So that's the item for consideration for the council. There's still a couple that are vacant. I did make some inquiries about the Board of Review because it requires 3 persons. Still working through that. We've had Mr. Geitz and I have made some other contacts, but that will have to show at the next meeting. If not, the city attorney sits in as a person that sits on the Board of Review if we do not find a third person, as is stated. But if we could find a third person, that'd be great on the Board of Review. There's others that will come hopefully in the next meeting or two with some vacancies that I'm having contact with some residents. We have a vacancy still on the Planning Commission in Precinct 2, and we also have a vacancy on the Brownsville Redevelopment Authority, but that's a kind of a bigger lift in trying to find that opportunity. So if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. If not, it's to the council for.
Your Honor.
Councilman Lamore.
Yes, I make a motion that the resolution making appointments to city boards and commissions be approved.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Germaine on item 2639, the appointments to city boards and commissions. Further comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman?
Yes.
Angeli?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Before we go to the next item, because one of the items that came at the last meeting, Councilman Vining asked about the mayor pro tem position. I did go back and look at some options that were done in past administrations to see how that worked. I'm still open to discussion with the council members regarding what their time commitments, availability, I should say, might be in that sense. I also thinking through maybe an opportunity month by month to make sure that there's items that the mayor attends that would fit with a particular council members, not only their interest, but also their time. I know that may be a little more laborious, but I'd like to share those opportunities. I did send in one of the emails. There's only 1 or 2 committees that may not serve as the title as mayor, but if there's interest, and I'm going to make some comments about that at the end, some of those commissions that might be, if there's an interest from council, but I'll be glad to speak further with any or all of you regarding that. So just a comment I thought was appropriate for the appointments. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is the consent agenda, and for item B, approval of payments to vendors, the amount should read $699,010.49, 699,010.49.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Any items from council members to pull for further discussion? Seeing none. Any items on the consent agenda, those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? Seeing none, a motion will be in order.
Your Honor,
Councilman
make a
Moore.
motion that all items be approved under the consent agenda, carried out, and recorded by the clerk.
Motion by Councilman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Germaine. All items on the consent agenda be accepted, carried out, and adopted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman?
Yes.
Echoangeli?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Jermaine?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item.
I have no further items, Your Honor.
Full comments. Still January. Councilwoman Whitman.
No comments today.
Councilman Michelangeli.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have two. One is, and they're both pretty much related to ALCC. The first one is, as part of the budget deliberations that it's going on within the administration, considering, based on the first quarter report that we received from ALCC relative to, their operations and funding, I'd like at least council to consider maybe increasing the amount of city contribution that we put into ALCC next year. That would just be something to consider as part of the budget process. The second one is regarding the facility over there. We've just approved professional design services for the kitchen renovation. I think it would be appropriate, from my perspective at least, that we allocate some money in the budget to do an assessment of the library space there, which seems to get a lot of use. The library, the Lillian Stewart Navarre Library is relatively small. Based on standards for communities, they always recommend 1 square foot of library per person, which would be around 22,000 square feet of library space, which the city of Monroe does not have between our two facilities. So I think strategically, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea if we had somebody come in and evaluate if that part of the building in the long term would need to be expanded, and then kind of keep our eye out for potential grant funds that go into those type of facilities. But without doing a study to know how big it should be or what the renovation should be, we're never going to know. So that's kind of two areas for potential budget consideration for the next fiscal year, Your Honor.
Mr. Pastu.
Your Honor, in response, we've had some general discussion, certainly with, staff and as well as, ALCC, our Opportunity Center at the ALCC, of possibly looking at something on that same line, but broader. We've got property there. And so how do you integrate the library, the existing center, and it may require some sort of master plan, if you will, maybe retaining some sort of architect that's got a more of a focus on that type of cultural, recreational type planning that would go along with the space analysis, and certainly looking at the site that may incorporate some of the improvements that we have with Labor Park. So I may just look at it in its totality for
Broader
both,
sense. That's
both,
fine.
if that would be, and we'll maybe try and put some proposal and look to see what we can put in the budget for this upcoming year.
Fine. Good, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilwoman Vining.
To continue on with the conversation the city manager and John were having, in the meantime, I know that's in the future, but in the meantime, we're allocating quite a bit of funds to the ALCC. I just want to gently remind the council, the whole building belongs to the city. So there are needs right now in terms of the ceiling, the dropped ceiling that's very outdated, panels falling, different things like that, and then the lighting. So maybe it might take us a little longer to get to the broader aspect of how do we connect the two, but I'd like some consideration had for the immediate improvements that we could do on a much smaller scale. So, and I'd also like to thank everyone who came out yesterday to our Martin Luther King brunch. I believe about 200 people showed up, give or take a few, and it was really great time. So I want to thank the community for coming out and honoring the legacy and life of Dr. King over at the Oaks Community Hall yesterday. We had a great time. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Germaini.
I want to congratulate SMCC for winning both those titles. And it's wonderful to see the standard of excellence they have in the students that went on in the past, that's continuing on today, and will go through the future. It's great to see the young kids with high standards like that. I applaud them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Lamore.
Yes, just going off of that, I too as well would like to congratulate the SMCC volleyball and football state championship teams. This is not only the first time they've done this, the second time they've done that in the last 5 years, where both teams have accomplished state championships in the same year. So kudos to them. As well as Councilman Germain said, great standards. GPAs are the foremost for them, not championships, but they're champions in education first, champions in sports second. So congratulations to them. I'd also like to congratulate our port director on receiving a $1 million grant to purchase a heavy crane down there. They're working at a record pace right now, unloading and loading freight down there from the vessels. But this will only help facilitate that at a greater rate and make Monroe a greater port in the future. So congratulations to Paul Lamar and getting this accomplished, and all the people in the Port Commission for seeing it through. And this is where Monroe is going to succeed in the future, in my opinion, is down in our port. So kudos to them for doing a great job down there and continuing the work that they're doing. That's it, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilman Felder.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you to the ALCC and MCOP for sharing their quarterly report with us. I think the financials and the survey results that they shared were especially interesting, and I hope that we all learned something there about the needs of that particular facility and the community that it serves. And how wonderful it is, of course, to come from a community that produces such talented and distinguished young men and women, both athletically and academically. It's certainly a wonderful achievement that both of them have accomplished. That's truly awesome. And then certainly congratulations to all of our new committee members this evening. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Just a few comments and reminders. I want to remind City Council, as you're well aware, our goals and objectives work session is scheduled for Saturday, February 1st, beginning at 8:30. Should go to about 1 or 2 o'clock. We have 2 on the agenda. We'll see how quickly we go through that. But also important that the SWOT analysis that was given to us by the city manager. I had a couple different dates I think that got out, but if we could get those to the manager by the close of business tomorrow, would be helpful. I know that a few have come in already, but if we could get those to the manager, more time for the support that's going to be at this session to review through those and kind of put them together. So a long-term reminder coming up, the Michigan Municipal League Capital Conference is March 16th and 17th, if your schedule permits. It's in Lansing at the Lansing Center, as it usually is. And I know that there's, and if you can't stay both days, sometimes the early session or the late session on the Wednesday is well. I did mention about the committees. I want to thank the council for the support on the recommendations, but also one of the items that I'd sent out with the traffic committee, smaller committees that used to be, but yet it's a seat that the mayor sits on, but it's could be a council as well, and an opportunity also to kind of direct the and chair the meeting as well. But if you want to see what it's like, it's usually a short, clear, quicker meeting until there's a big topic. Then we have sitting here with a full house. But tomorrow night is a traffic committee at 5 o'clock. It's up on the 3rd floor. We do that because they use the smart screen and stuff to be able to show the activities. If it fits your schedule, if you want to see it, stop by. I also want to give thanks to the ALCC and the MCOP. As Councilman Felder said, the first quarterly report was great to review through, see the photographs, see the great work, but also the activities and the enjoyment that both seniors and students are there, and the support of the staff, but also the first expenditure report as well, the first quarter. And my thanks, I know that I see that Stephanie Kazbersak is here with us this evening. We had an item on the agenda that kind of talks to Councilman Michelangelo's and Councilman Finding's discussion of how we continue to develop that the ALCC and the Navarre Library. I think there's some great options. I know the councilman shared some with me at the end of the last meeting, which I shared with the city manager as well. And it was right along the lines with Councilman Michelangelo. Last thing is, as Councilman Vining said, the Martin Luther King, not just commemoration, but also celebration. And there's additional opportunities throughout the week, whether it be out at the community college in our neighborhood, but it's something as we start and live our lives collectively and together, think about, as Councilman said, his legacy and life as well, and how we can improve our community and how we respond and work and live together. Those are my comments this evening. Clerk Treasurer Lavoy.
I have no comments this evening.
City Manager.
Your Honor, I have a couple items, and if I may just ask Stephanie if could talk a little bit about the advisory committee. We still got to make an appointment. I know it needs to go through the mayor, but if you could provide a little background and who's on it, if you don't mind. Mayor, is that all right?
Yeah, that'd be great. In fact, there was a couple inquiries to me today about that.
Yes.
It was in that quarter report, and so this is great timing. Thanks for being here.
So advisory councils are not new to community action. We've been doing them for many years. And the difference is, we have an MCOP board that really guides the strategic vision for MCOP as an agency. But for community initiatives, more community-based work, we assemble advisory councils. And so our advisory councils in the past have been made up of people who participate in programs, our community partners and stakeholders, and then municipal officials if we're doing work in a particular municipality. So the best example I have is the creation of the Lord's Harvest Pantry wouldn't have happened without an advisory council. We raised $1 million to open the Lord's Harvest Pantry at MCOP, and it's had a tremendous impact on the community. And that just wasn't our organization. It was a group of community stakeholders. So when we got involved at the ALCC and started the Opportunity Center on October 1st, we wanted to assemble an advisory council. And we probably had 3/4 of that council populated immediately of people who just expressed interest in being part of what we were doing. But we still have a couple of seats on the advisory council. We have 2 members from the ALCC board who sit on the advisory council, 2 members from the MCOP board who sit on the advisory council. And then we have people from the community. We have Omar Furden, Jeff Hensley. I'm sure I'm going to miss somebody, but we have 2 seats that are still available. We'd like the city to have a representative on the advisory council, and then we still have 1 open seat that we've been talking to a couple people about. So that's just a little background of advisory councils and why we operate it that way. But it has been very effective. And we had our inaugural meeting on November 23rd. We had Rebecca Kraus come in and facilitate that meeting. So we spent 3 hours. We had a lot of great discussion, and we came up with the purpose of the advisory council. And that purpose is to mobilize resources to provide opportunities for everyone. So we thought that really captured the spirit of what we were trying to do at the center. And obviously you can see from our first quarter report, we've had some great success, not only bringing in additional revenues, but bringing people into the center. So we're so excited, but would love to have a member on our advisory council that represents the city.
Thank you, Stephanie. Mr. Pastor and I just, as that came through, just had a brief comment really at the end of today about that and thinking, so this is really helpful to understand that and what the role of this advisory commission or committee is, what some of the asks may be, because while it could be from elected position, it could be from a non-elected. I think about fundraising and some challenges that might pose to a elected official, but I'm looking down to my right down here to Mr. Buds. It's something I'll probably want to chat with him about tomorrow. So if there's any questions, I'm sure we'll get back with you, but hopefully move forward at the next meeting to have a recommendation from, as a city representative to help with that as well. But maybe some details they just popped ahead. And if there's thoughts the council has, of course, I'm sure they'll share them with myself or the city manager as well.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Wonderful.
And thanks for allowing us to have Ed for another couple of years.
Thank you. Mr. Bastu? Oh, there's a question?
Felder had a question.
Oh, Councilman Felder, go ahead.
Yes, I was just wondering what time the advisory council met and if the meetings were open to the public.
Yes, they are open to the public, and our meetings are monthly. So it would be a monthly time commitment, and our first meeting is February 5th. It's Wednesdays. We're trying out Wednesdays at first to see if that's what people can do, the majority of people can do, at 5:30 p.m. at the center.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Awesome, thank you.
Very good, thanks for the question. Oh, Councilman Kalangeli.
Your Honor, I just have a question, and I think I'm going to ask Adam the question. The building authority has the ability to issue bonds.
Come to the podium. So when you got the money, it's just to the podium. Thank you, Mr. Sell.
I'm sure that's not the end of the question, right? Yes, they do have, the building authority does have the ability to issue bonds.
The question I have is, at the workshop, we talked about the need to repair the roof at the visitor center, education center, okay? And then listening to Councilperson Vining talk about some of the needs for maintenance at the library in terms of like the ceiling tiles and things along those lines. Does it make sense to take a look at a couple of maintenance-related projects and run them through the building authority and then have a annual stipend come out of the capital improvements that pays for that, so we can get these capital projects done? And the only reason why I'm saying it is that when we went to the public regarding the millage for the fire station, the city was criticized often by residents that we don't do a good job of taking care of the properties that we have. And so that's kind of the basis for the question. If we have a couple of facilities that need some repairs, does it make sense to do it under one type of financial arrangement and do them all at the same time?
Really just depends on the type of repairs, honestly. And it doesn't necessarily have to go through the building authority. It could just be done through a capital improvement bonds. So, I mean, we just need, it's just brought up tonight, so we really need to look at what it is and determine from there what the best method of financing it would be. But, I mean, when you do the building authority, you get into some additional more paperwork costs related to those types of financing, because the building authority really, in most cases, has to end up being the owner of the building if they're going to hold bonds related to that property. So it might even be better to just do it straight through the city with a capital improvement bond if we ended up going that way. But it just really, like I said, depends on what the financing is and what the structure would need to be. You could do a capital improvement bond if it was just a one-off project. You could even just do an installment purchase agreement. Those are shorter term. Either of them could be shorter term, but installment purchase agreements usually are 10 years or less.
Okay. Question, I'm thinking of facilities. This is primarily for Jeff. Do we still have the front porch at the Sawyer building still need to be repaired, or has that been done?
Oh, that was done a few years ago.
Was it done a few years ago? Okay. Because I know that we just finished up the foyer at the Dorsch Library. Okay. All right, so I mean, that was my thought, was that if we have a couple of facilities that need some repairs, can we just bundle it together and do it all at one time?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you look at a bond, you'll have to make sure that the costs you're incurring have a useful life, or at least extend the useful life, at least as long as the term of the bond. So that's one of the things we'd have to look at in terms of what the projects were before we decide how to finance them.
Okay.
Councilman Vine, I think you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I was just curious, is the library even a part of the capital improvement process?
They are. Yeah.
Are we?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know, like, we have a contract with the city, the library has a contract, and they pay for general maintenance and upkeep, the library. So I don't know how far over and above like, what is the library responsible
Mm-hmm.
for replacing
No.
the ceiling and the
Ours.
lighting, or is it
They're
Okay.
ours, and if any capital improvements to the buildings, they're our responsibility.
like basic maintenance? You know?
But I mean, in the
Plum-
past, we've put a lot of CDBG money into Dorsch Library, so there's
Yeah, a lot's been going to doors.
hundreds
And-
of thousands, I'm thinking of. if
And
I
I
remember
guess
right.
just to clarify why I brought it up, Navarre, we handle so many children every day, but if you've ever been in Navarre, it's just like a rectangle shape, and there's nowhere there's nowhere to go. So we've been trying to figure out how to facilitate, how to be able to provide the best use for the library for those children, because we do have high numbers of young people all day, and we're running high number of programs. So that's why I brought it up, because eventually we're gonna need something as far as the library, more space or reconfiguration of the space, things like that. And I know we've done a lot of investment in in Dorsch, because it's such a beautiful historic building, and ours is kind of just like blah, cinder block, kind of
Yeah.
plain and ugly. So yeah, it's getting to be historic. Yeah. So yeah, that's why I brought it up, because we really handle a high number. I don't want to say handle, but do programming for, probably we average 20 to 30 kids for our programs. And see, so the library, just a quick, provides a after school at the library for all 16 branches in the county. But at Navarre, we do probably 4 or 5 times the programming that the other 16 branches do, just because we have so many children there every day, and we have to find programming and things for them to do. So it's a much higher use, but we don't get the high budget, because the library bases their budget on circulation of books, not how many people walk in and out of the door every day. So, I mean, that's a conversation I probably should have with the library board. But so we have such a high number of children and families, but not a high number of book circulation. So, yeah, we need to find the funding from somewhere. So I want to see how much are we as a city able to help with that, and how much is the library board able to help with that.
I think developing the plan before you even talk about what you can afford, developing the plan about what you need to do is probably the first step.
And that would be administration's commitment. We'll look into it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Sell.
Thank you, Mr. Sell.
You know, follow-up to Councilman and Councilman Vining, I think back to earlier in our discussions today with the city manager talking about the capital improvements millage and proposal, and refining that into the road aspect, as opposed to being abroad when we first started the conversation. And it really ties to the conversation here is there another way in which to achieve that way the millage proposal going forward as the committee meets and going to the community is specifically about roads, which we have the road ratings, the PACER rating, we know the priorities, we figured that out years ahead, and how far can we get with a proposal there. At the same time, looking at, is there an avenue to take care of some of these facility capital improvements? I know Mr. Pastor said they'll look into that. I think it's probably a topic to come back to council and to the committee for the capital improvements, so they know it's council as a whole where that's moving forward. I think it's a great idea, so thanks for bringing that up. Mr. Pastu, other comments?
The last item is related to the public safety assessment. When I receive the final report from Fitch and Associates, hopefully here in the next week, I'll obviously forward it on to City Council. But soon thereafter, we need to talk about scheduling a special meeting, to do the review and discuss in some detail with that. So a little more information. I mean, there is some complexity to it, so some of it could potentially have some collective bargaining aspects to it. So, excuse me, depending on some of the direction and with that. So I say that, but when you get the report, give you some time to digest it, and then look to arrange an opportunity for us to discuss, going forward with the alternatives that were presented and even the immediate short-term recommendations. So that's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. As we move forward with that, I think the presentation, we have that was sent to each of us, so we could, probably reviewing that already, maybe forming some questions as that report comes through that Mr. Pastu is mentioning. Also want to digest that to meet together. So as we do meet on that, knowing the how and when we have those conversations as soon as possible, so we can getting that moving forward. I appreciate that, Mr. Pastu, for letting us know. Yes, Councilman? Oh, yeah.
When city manager, when you say special meeting, do you mean closed session or public meeting?
To be honest with you, it may, because, some of the options would certainly impact the collective bargaining process. And so, I'd certainly look to Mr. Buds and Mr. Green, our Labor Council, if that meets this test for that. So I can't give you a definitive answer, but, it may, it's going to walk the line pretty close, whether it needs to go into a closed session or not.
Yeah, because I can't speak for the entire council, but I just have a feeling there might be a more free flow of ideas or opinions.
Well, certainly if I
If
may,
we were able to talk amongst ourselves.
Hey, though, from the collective bargaining aspect, and it really is would be the sole focus for having that dialogue, is how would that the alternatives and options presented relate to going forward to any kind of collective bargaining position the city council may take, and that's very critical for that to be understood, if that's in fact the direction that we end up going. So more to come with that, but I'll follow up with Mr. Buds as well as Mr. Green on that issue.
Thanks for the update.
As well as Clerk Treasurer, she keeps me honest as well, so.
Questions? Next item is citizens' comments. Close the meeting. Any other comments from those present here this evening? Yes, you have a question? Yes. You want to come up? Come on up. Your name, please. Yes. Oh, you right. The microphone is fine, Kate. Right there. That way we pick you up on the microphone. That's great.
Is the meeting doing good?
I think it's doing well.
I heard you've been talking about like the educational center.
Yes.
It's really cool. You put in that room.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
Thank you too.
Yes, it's a topic that we've talked at some previous meetings, with some transitions that we've made, and everything keeps to hopefully move forward in a positive sense, but there's a lot of, as you heard, challenges for us as well. So I appreciate you asking. Thank you. Other comments from those present here this evening? Seeing none, motion, please.
Motion to adjourn.
From Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Germaini, to adjourn. Clerks, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman? Ike Angeli? Vining? Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes.